Back here on CBS Sports HQ, man, a week ago, Knicks fans, they were climbing up street signs and celebrating by thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in the streets in New York. And now it's a little bit more quiet after falling to the Pacers in 6. Another year, that championship drought just extends. And now head coach Tom Thibodeau's job being called into question with that loss and failing to reach the NBA Finals. So getting a look at some Knicks that are under contract. So the core under contract through next season. No one leaned on their starters more than the Knicks down the stretch, and Tibbs. Right now, poised for those same names to return to the lineup. Remember adding Nicole to the mix in exchange for 5 first-rounders. And then also they brought in KAT from Minnesota via trade, but still wasn't enough. So we'll see what New York can do with this offseason. So let's welcome in Ashley Nicole Moss and Roy Hibbert. Guys, this is like a Knicks offseason outlook. But first, Roy, we're going to give you the floor and express whatever you want to tell and say to Ashley Nicole Moss, since your Pacers came out on top and are going to the NBA Finals.
This is such a setup.
I should have taken that bet that you proposed. I forgot what it was, but next time I should definitely do it. But 50 Cent said it best. It was all good just a week ago. That's what you get for throwing trash at people. So it is what it is. It'll be a good long off season for you guys.
Okay, first of all, I cannot be held accountable for every action of every New Yorker and every Knicks fan. Second of all, okay, he shouldn't have been wearing a Pacers jersey in New York City. It's kind of what he deserved. Anyway, look, it was a fun season for the Knicks. Obviously, there's going to be a lot to address going forth and moving into this offseason. Whether you talk about front office, whether you talk about coaching, even when you talk about roster, I know we'll dive into a little bit of everything. But this narrative that the Knicks overachieved this season, I actually don't agree with that. I think that this team, this roster was built to beat the Boston Celtics. And obviously, circumstances made that happen a little bit quicker than maybe it would have naturally, and wrap that series up quicker than it would have happened naturally. But I don't buy this narrative that the Knicks weren't supposed to be in the Eastern Conference Finals, and that's not what was supposed to happen. This is what this Knicks team has been working towards, and this is what they're going to work towards following this season and the next season after that.
Roy, you're very humble in your winning ways. I was expecting a lot more here, just considering the back and forth that we've seen, but I'll give you
He's
final
better than me, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to punch down, but it's okay. My Pacers did a good job. I would want to, usually I'd start with Hibbert, but today let's start with Pascal Siakam, the Eastern Conference, most valuable player. He was great. He had, 35-plus point game, I think, in game 2. I think he played a very solid game in terms of offensively picking his shots in the mid-range, but then at the same time he was aggressive on defense against OG Anunoby. I was really looking to see what type of dynamics and see what type of body language those two showed, being former teammates and have played in Toronto at a high level and won, obviously. But he did amazing. And then Halliburton, obviously there was some discrepancy about who would get the trophy at the end of the game, but I think it was rightfully so. But Halliburton played great. He led the team with a lot of passing and assists, and he allowed his teammates to catch the ball in rhythm where they don't have to work hard to get a shot. They don't have to dribble 8-9 times after a pick and roll just to get a tough contested shot, hoping for a free throw, an and one, or anything like that. He makes his teammates better. He pushes the pace. He looks for offense, and it allows the bench, which I think the Pacers did a good job. I think 38 points. I think they're 18 in terms of bench points. He gets them going, and then once the second unit comes in, and he gets to the bench, the second unit can flourish, led by TJ McConnell, who puts a lot of pressure defensively and by attacking the paint nonstop.
So, Roy, congratulations to your Pacers. They're moving on to the NBA Finals, going to face OKC. Now let's shift over to the Knicks and what the offseason could potentially look like for them. So our colleague Sam Quinn, he has 2 articles right now on CBSSports.com. And one of those articles, he kind of expresses this belief that firing Tibbs might be the only way to get this team to the next level. And I know we've had this conversation before, the 3 of us, not too long ago. Ashley, I know you have some very strong opinions on Tibbs. So do you agree with that? Do you think Tibbs getting fired is the only way to get this team to the next level? Where do you stand on that?
I wouldn't say it's the only way, but I feel like it's a big chunk of the direction that this team needs to head in. And I'll say why. Look, I make no secret about I am so grateful to Tom Thibodeau for getting the Knicks to this point. I think a lot of the just grittiness and the ferociousness of this Knicks team, offensively and defensively, especially in previous seasons, has to do with what Tom Thibodeau has established in this locker room. And it's very clear that the guys that you want to be behind him are behind him. But I think what's also very clear is that just because you have the support of the locker room doesn't mean you are the coach that necessarily helps this team get to the next level. And this team wasn't created to just be satisfied with Eastern Conference appearances season after season. This team wants to go to the NBA Finals. This team wants to win the NBA Finals. And I think the issue with Tom Thibodeau is he has a very specific coaching style, and that coaching style is to ride his starters and not put a lot of faith in his bench. And this is just not with the New York Knicks. This is throughout his entire career. And Roy can speak to this because he knows some of those guys that have been coached by Tom Thibodeau throughout the years. And, you know, the narrative is out there about what happened in Chicago. I mean, the list goes on and on. So while I think Tibbs does a lot of things really well, and I think that he is a very intelligent coach, that doesn't always equal a coach that's coaching style translate to the postseason. And the realistic situation at hand here is that it's not all Tom Thibodeau's fault. I would never say it was all his fault, but a big chunk of the eyebrow raises throughout this postseason was the fact that he did not go to his bench. There was no creativity in his adjustments. He adjusted too late in a lot of these series. You talk about Detroit, Knicks almost lost that one. Boston, there was other factors that I think helped push the Knicks out victorious in that one. And then they ran into a brick wall when they hit the Indiana Pacers. When you go against a Rick Carlisle who's adjusting on the fly, is going to his bench, trusts his bench, and Tibbs just adjusted too late. I have a hard time believing that a leopard is going to change his spots from this season to the next season, and then next season you're going to get a drastically different coach. So if you're in the Knicks front office, you have to decide, are you going to trust that Tom Thibodeau just changes his coaching style after all these years, or are you going to try to push yourself in the direction of what you're trying to build, and that is a championship team?
Yeah, I agree. I think what Ashley said was right. I'll take you guys back to a little bit of time when I was playing. You know, it was when Tibbs was coaching in Chicago, and Frank Vogel, coach at the time, went to an end of the season coaches meeting, and they were talking about, it was around the era when, you know, Tim Duncan and the Spurs were actually doing a lot of missing games, sitting out guys, resting guys for the playoffs. So in this meeting, Frank Vogel said that the main thing they were talking about is this time rest management. And then he told me, Thibodeau put his hand up and said, Michael Jordan won championships without time management. Why do these guys need to do this today? That story stuck out to me all the time since Frank Vogel told me that years ago, and it seems to be following him around pretty much from place to place. He is a great coach. He turned this franchise around, back-to-back 50-season wins. You know, he obviously they changed the team drastically during the summer, and then they actually got to, you know, Eastern Conference Finals. So that goes to say that they have some continuity there, and they're playing well. I know we'll talk later on about what could they add to do anything better, but I don't think, you know, you could just be adding pieces every summer. There's no continuity. Again, I said we'll talk about that. But I think as an outside looking in, as a basketball fan, NBA fan, I think that this is as good as you guys are going to get, because everybody's going to continue to get better and better. I know my Pacers will be back here again next year, but I think the Knicks have some decisions to make.
And let's dive a little bit further into those decisions, because as mentioned in this article as well, not only is Sam Quinn kind of talking about Tibbs, but also the roster, what they should do, and kind of diving into whether the Knicks should break up KAT and Brunson this early on. So, Roy, what do you think?
I think you don't trade this pair. I think they need, I said this like 2 years ago, or a year and some change ago, when the Pacers made that trade with the Toronto Raptors to get Pascal Siakam. Let's see what they do first, you know, with this year in the middle of the season trade, and then let's see what they do with the summer with each other. I've been there before. We've had David West come in with a young Paul George, Lance Stevenson, and George Hill. We get that summer together, then we're back in the Eastern Conference Finals. We're doing what we're supposed to do. So I feel like those two guys are on the right side of 30 years old, 28, and I think 26 respectively, so they have a lot more time in their prime. I would love to see them add some like other pieces and some shooting, and then get a little bit like a lesser dependence on Jalen Brunson one-on-one all the time, having the ball in his hands, dominating the ball, not passing it so other guys can get into a rhythm. Do I think Josh Hart and Mikal Bridges are those guys who can create on their own and keep that offensive thing going? Maybe some games time to time. Do I think KAT is going to be a better defensive player in the next summer? Or maybe if he works at it, maybe he can. I would love to see him maybe get 5% better on his pick and roll coverage and everything like that. Yes, but do guys work on that during the summer? Mostly shots is what I see from their Instagram and everything like that from all those trainers. So I think that I think you should keep this group together for at least another year or two. This is something special. New York loves Brunson. So I say don't trade him.
So, Ash, I know you mentioned, of course, this team is not built to just go to an Eastern Conference final. They want to get to the NBA Finals. They want to win the finals, of course. So what superstars, what big names do you think the Knicks should go after this summer to get this team over the hump and finally do that?
So I don't necessarily know if it's big names. I think you need more reliable shooting. And, I know everybody is opposed to breaking up KAT and Brunson, but there are on-court chemistry issues, and there's also defensive shortcomings. And you want to be able to play your two best players on the court at the same time. That's the whole name of the game, right? So I agree with Roy. I think maybe this is, not having enough time to really figure out a groove when you compare them to an Indiana Pacers team that has been playing together a lot longer overall. But look, let's call a spade, and I'm just going to say it. If Giannis becomes available and Giannis is interested in coming to New York and putting on the orange and blue, you ship KAT out to Milwaukee, and, that is what it is. Because at the end of the day, Giannis is a better player than Karl Anthony Towns, overall speaking. This is not a knock to KAT. I think he's phenomenal. I think he has a lot of upside to his game. But when you look at Giannis as an overall player, if Giannis has interest in New York, and that's a realistic possibility for the New York Knicks, you absolutely break up KAT and Brunson. Now, if Giannis is not somebody that you're going to go ahead and land, then you're not breaking him. You're not breaking that duo up for any just regular schmegular player. This is just that you just don't do it. You don't make a blockbuster trade like that to just break them up and trade him away for anybody. So if it's Giannis who's not on the table, then you just really need to get more reliable shooters to surround your team with, whether it's in the starting unit or if it's on the bench. But for me, Giannis is the big fish. If you can land that, we're having a different conversation.
Roy, Giannis?
Yeah, New York obviously won. They want big fish in New York. Totally understand that. Maybe if they don't shoot and get that big guy, I think another guy that could, I believe is on the Milwaukee Bucks, Gary Trent Jr. He had an electrifying game, a series against my Pacers. He has scoring ability at the rim and at the three-point line. He may not be the big splash that everybody would want, but he is a 3-and-D type player. He can D up on the defensive end, on the perimeter guys. I would love to see him have that back and forth again with Halliburton and everything like that. They could bark back and forth. That rivalry can continue to be there. He has shooting from the outside. He has that defensive edge, and it would be a good little story to add to make things a little spicy between the Pacers and the Knicks possibly next year.
Ashley, you're going to be rooting on the Pacers?
I like that name, Jacqueline. And I also think Chris Paul's a name that we should look at. I know he's of a certain age, but that is the point guard for a reason. So.
Okay, and Ashley's going to be rooting on the Pacers from here on out.
No, it's OKC. Don't play me.
Oh, wow. She says OKC all day. You can hear more from Ashley on her show, Triple Threat. There's full episodes posted right now on YouTube. Make it easy. You can watch right now by scanning that QR code on your screen.